our top 10 games of 2020. Me and Tarrant, what do you think coming up?
Hi, it's Tarrant.
And Stella from Meeple University. We are very excited today to share you our top 10 of 2020 that we play on 2020 that I think released or received in 2020.
Yep.
And
Yeah, we're doing our best to try to make it games of this year. Obviously, it's always, particularly when games have a release in a different language, you can never quite be sure what you call it, but this is our list, and it's the games we associate with this year. So
there you go. So, before that though, we are going to do a special mention of some games that, it's different, maybe not quite make it yet to top 10. There's just a lot of games as usual. Always confused which one to choose. So, not quite made it yet, but, it's, maybe it's different. We'll tell you why they make it to our special mention. Tarrant.
yeah, so this is, I think, one of the things I found with this year, and I don't know exactly why, but all the games I really liked were midweight games. And I don't know if it was because there was a great renaissance of midweight games. I feel like that's what it was, because I played a lot of games where, they weren't that long. They were done in an hour or in 5 rounds or something, but they just clicked a bunch of existing mechanics together really well. There may be some other factors. I know that, that I haven't seen any party games in 2020 because of the year it's been. It just sort of hasn't been a party game type of year. I haven't seen that many heavy games, but I guess some of the heavy games that have come in, I don't know, they haven't stacked up compared with some of the previous years. So, yeah,
Maybe because people holding back their releases for, no conventions. Maybe that's part of the reason.
Yeah. And it could also be a change in my tastes, of course.
Evolving.
I'm not a stagnant object. I vary from time to time. So, maybe I'm more keen on games I can learn a little more quickly. I don't know.
Okay.
But in any case, so you will see when we get to my top 5, because I've only got a top 5, it's going to be all midway games. And so, I'm going to talk about the light and the heavy games that I liked this year.
Let's get to it.
As part of this little section.
Let's get to it.
So, one thing I spoke about in this video last year was the rise of IP games and good quality IP games. So not just slapping an IP onto Monopoly and getting it out, but the good work that particularly Ravensburger and Falcke and Prospero Hall are doing in taking modern hobby types of games, having really simple modern hobby types of games that have an IP on them, and selling them through the major stores in the US, and really serving as gateways, but also putting a good spin on the games and having adding some unique things into it. Like they had Wonder Woman this year, which had a nice alpha avoiding mechanic and a few things like that.
Oh yeah.
So we had quite a lot of 7 or 8 IP games this year, but I think the one that I acknowledge and I like the most was Back to the Future, Back in Time. So 2 Back to the Future games this year, but Back in Time was all set in the 1955, and it was trying to work. You were trying to achieve about 3 different things. You had to make the DeLorean you had to equip the DeLorean and make it hit the hook on the string at 11:04.
Yeah. Let's move to point-to-point movement, set collection, dice rolling.
And then you had to get Marty's
dice
parents.
rolling? Is it that?
Yeah, there is some dice rolling and allocating. You had to get Marty's parents back together, so there was a love meter, and then you were also working against. You had to get Biff out of the way. So it had all those sorts of pieces that you're trying to achieve in a typical co-op.
Plus, we love Back to the Future series, all 3 of them. I wish they make more.
Yeah, and it was a dice management sort of game, but it was just a really neat game. And the times that we played it, I think you played it on a live stream once and got beaten, and we played it. And
Thanks for sharing that.
and we played it and we're very close. It felt like a really nicely balanced co-op. So
Yeah, I
for
agree.
me, yeah,
What's the next one,
I think
Tara?
that's the top for that. I think last year in this list I had 2 roll and writes in my top 5, but roll and writes, they kind of went away as quickly as they came. It was not a big year.
I agree. It's not as like when people just discovering that everyone's got roll and write. Everyone wants to play it, but now it's kind of slowed down a little bit.
Yeah, and some of the ones that we did play this year were, they tried some new things, and they hit or miss for me. But the one I quite liked, and we played it quite recently, not even sure it has an English release yet, or it's a very recent English release, but Trek 12.
Bruno Catala.
Yep. So I quite enjoyed that. It's one of the pure bingo styles, like Welcome to or Cartographers, where there's one set of dice,
Two
or
dice.
in this case it's 2 dice, and then everyone plays the same value. And it's got a nice little mechanic because you've got the 2 dice, and then you have to place you place a number into your grid or onto your mountain, and it's got to be either the higher die, the lower die, the sum, the product, or the difference. And you can only do each of those 4 times in the game. So you've got a hedge on when you pick certain ones.
To get a cluster of the same number or a chain of consecutive number up or down.
So it was neat. It wasn't hard. It's over in half an hour. It's one of those plays 1 to 100, because I think it's 1 to 50 is what's on the box, because there's no interaction between the players. But it's just it's really nice. It's really nice the way I like that mechanic where you can only do each of those 5 operations on the 2 dice 4 times per game.
Also plays solo, and it is a campaign game, so you have the options to open envelopes after envelopes and getting more sheets to play with.
Yeah, more sheets, and it'll add a few extra rules, and we haven't got through all of them, but it is that's a nice feature as well.
And next one, Tarrant?
The next one, I will acknowledge heavy games. I dumped on heavy games a little bit before, but there have been good heavy games, and the heavy game that I enjoyed the most this year was Tamon Tinsuyu. And part of that is because it did something I hadn't really seen before. It was always something I'd imagined, and they actually made it work, where there's action spaces all over the board. It's a worker placement with action spaces everywhere, and you can only use collectively, anyone can only use each action once. And it's got some nice engine build mechanics. It's got mechanics where you can do things and other play, like you build steps down to the next set of action spaces, and everyone else has to pay you to use your steps. And there's a lot of different paths. Once you get past that different mechanic, it is essentially your typical Crunchy Euro, with a few different pathways and majorities that you've got to target. But yeah, we played that a few times, and I always found that quite fun.
Yeah, I found it fun as well. So thanks for mentioning it, Tarrant. And next one, we've got our list here in front of us. Next one
Trying
is...
to avoid looking down at it.
Yeah.
One on the lighter side that surprised me quite a bit by how much I enjoyed it and how often we've played it is Zombie Teens Evolution. It is...
Surprised. I was surprised as well. I thought it's a children game.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah, it's fundamentally your standard sort of firefighting co-op game. But it simplifies everything down really, really small. You've only got 2 actions per turn, and you spend it moving crates and fighting zombies. And it's interesting seeing a game with only 2 action points, because it actually becomes quite limiting.
Usually 3 or 4. Usually 4.
So it's like, yeah, it takes what you know from Pandemic or any of those sorts of games, and it shrinks it into half the action points, half the board size, half everything. But you can get through a game in like half an hour, if that, and then move on to the next one. And this also has a campaign in it. There's 10 I think there's like 14 envelopes in there, and it just adds all these extra options. And it kind of has that video game feel as well, because
achievement unlocked.
Yeah, and it's there. You set it up according to like they've got all these achievement options. It's like the bonus achievements in your video game levels. Like you can go and get 3 stars, but then you can also complete this level without breaking the vase. I'm thinking of moving out at the moment. And Zombie Teens has a similar thing. You can like set it up starting with more zombies.
Moving out to Xbox games or video games.
You can start it up with like, all right, I'm going to try to do it with more zombies this time because that's what one of my objectives is. And if you win, you get to mark that objective off. And then you can do one where it's like, all right, I'll try to do this without using this specific sort of action. And so it actually, again, it's not something I've seen much in tabletop, but because of how quick the game is, it actually works really well. And it does have that feeling of, playing an Xbox game that has those little extra objectives. As long as you're keeping track of what you're doing, it's neat. And I really like the way I think it's really, what's the word, where you do something that hasn't been done before, and it's very
like
good.
Trailblazer.
Yeah, something like that. It's not the word I was looking for, but it is the case. I like the way it fits together, and to have a simple co-op like that.
And then we've got two more.
One more.
Sorry, one more.
The one other special mention I'll do is Planet Apocalypse. So this was, it was a big Kickstarter minis game from Peterson Games. And it comes in a lot of boxes like those minis games do, and it is a dice rolling battle sort of game, like a lot of those games are. But I liked, again, this comes to the medium gamer in me.
This is not usually what you you would play, but it's not particularly Euro games, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not normally my style, but what I really liked about it, it simplified a lot of the things. Like I usually associate minis games with
skirmish,
grid movement, skirmish types of games, complex exploring stories, and I liked that Planet Apocalypse stripped a lot of that away. There was no grid to move around. There was no, I have to be within 4 of this to use my ranged weapon. Basically, each game, it was a demon invasion, and there was only like 5 giant spaces on the board, and you've just got a cluster of demons, and you could be in that space fighting it.
Yes.
As you fight them, you build up courage, which lets you build up extra gifts. So it's got this very straightforward engine build, character build type mechanic.
Very much so.
It's got a tower defense mechanic as well, so you can be spending your courage to build up your characters, or you can be spending them to build up these tower defense. They're called ambushes. You set up, it's a group of people being ambushes, but they're essentially tower defending the demons as they come through. And then there's all this variability as well with the final boss, the lords and the ladies, who have these really game-changing, complicated powers and ways to fight them, and you've got to plan on that and build up on that basis. And so there's a lot for it's not something I've seen in a big minis game before, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, we've got how to play video for that one, and my short and sweet, and actually a summary video for that. We've done a lot of videos of those.
We do a bit for that, and we should contend here that we have done paid content for some of the games that we're talking about here, but this is our opinions. There's nothing paid about this.
And again,
video.
This is subjective, so you might not agree with us, which is fine. This is just our taste, basically.
Yeah, so those 5 games, so they're not necessarily my top 5.
How is this top 5 rather than top 10?
Yeah, so they're not necessarily games 6 through 10 on my list, but they're games that I really wanted to acknowledge for what they brought and what was innovative was the word I was looking for. Innovative about them. So yeah, Taiwan Tinsuyu, Zombie Teens Evolution, Planet Apocalypse, Trek 12, and Back to the Future Back in Time.
Now let's jump into our top 10.
Yes, so how we're going to do this, we're going to run through Stella's top 10 from 10 to 1. And my entire top 5 is somewhere in Stella's top 10. So when one of my top 5 comes out, I'm going to jump in and say that as well.
There you go. So, without further ado, my number 10. This is really hard to choose, and then there's like similar-ish game, but then I kind of like pick one out of the other ones, which I'll explain why. Number 10 is It's actually, we just received it. It just arrived. Like some of you, at the time of filming might not have it yet. Sleeping Guards. So Ryan Lockhart. I'm almost sure I've played all of Ryan Lockhart's game from Near and Far Above. Near and Far Above and Below the
Left and Right, East and West.
No! Klondike Rush?
Klondike Rush, Islebound.
Islebound, that's it, yeah, the other one.
Artifacts Inc. 8 Minute Empire.
Yes. Well,
Empires of the Void 2.
I really enjoy what this one brings. So this is basically a sandbox. So that's actually the key word here. Sandbox. Feels a lot like point and click computer game you used to play. There's no actually linear. It's not linear. I was almost say linearity. Linearity. Thank you. In it, there are other games that are similar that I have considered, like Forgotten Waters and Aftermath, which is really good story based. This one comes with thick storybook, beautiful art by Ryan. I don't know how he does a design game. He does the graphic design, I think, and the book and the. I'm sure he has help, but the game designing as well. It's amazing, especially if you have the deluxe component. It's just amazing. The coins so good. The story it's really like sandbox, as I say earlier. Very sandbox. You have characters that you control. You always play with 9 characters, divided by almost evenly to different number of players, and you basically do a ship action. You try to collect stuff. You upgrade your crew members, and then you venturing and then write the storybooks. If you played Near and Far and that sort of thing, it's similar.
Yeah, it's got the similar quest adventure text that you've seen in that and Above and Below, and I forget whether any of his others had that, but it's certainly part of his style. But it's on a very big, sprawling map. You won't have a huge map across the table,
it's a book,
like you would
spiral
with
book.
Yeah, so it's not quite like Seventh Continent where you've got cards and map everywhere, but you've got a book that between all of its pages has the entire map, and so you can just go wherever you want, find whatever quests you want, and
indeed
just explore.
Yeah. So that brings us to number 9. Red Outpost. So, Red Outpost was Kickstarter last year, I believe, and then fulfilled this year. We played the prototype version, and not much has changed. It is I'll let you talk about this one, Tarrant.
Yes, because this one is in my top 5 as well, and it fits very well. It's a medium game that plays over 2 rounds.
It is
as I was
actually
saying before.
The theme is probably a little bit different, and some people might not,
I know
keen.
I know the theme has turned some people off. So it is you're settling a new communist establishment on the moon or Mars or somewhere in space. I forget exactly which, and where I find the mechanic that comes with this game is really nice and simple and innovative. So it's a worker placement game, but there are 6 common workers, and in a given round, you will move one of the common workers and do the action, and then it's not available for anyone else. And some of the workers do certain actions better. There's only 12 actions, so it's simple to learn. But then when you've moved a worker, the action it does will change its morale, either up or down, and you have to put one of your discs onto the worker to show that you've used it, and then after the round is done, whoever has the majority will gain or lose points depending on that worker's morale.
It's very tricky, interconnected. We have had to play video on the Dice Tower for the campaign. Again, it hasn't changed that much, so it's still there. Components, I think the components changed.
I think some of them went from cubes to little meeples of food. But yeah, so you've got trying to earn points, which is an important timing element, because a lot of it is shared resources because it's a communist theme, and then you've got the area control on the workers themselves amounting to points. And yeah, I found it was one of those games. Yeah, it was one of those games where I read the rules and I just thought I've never seen something like this before. I know this is going to work well and be really interesting. And yet it's still a medium game that is done and played inside an hour or a little bit over an hour, and yeah, has a good lot of thought through it. So I definitely really like that one.
Look it up if you haven't played it.
Yes, Red Outpost.
Buy it. Red Outpost. So, and the next one I have is Viscounts of the West Kingdom by Garfield Games.
Yes, this is your number 8.
It is indeed my
It
number 8.
is in my top 5 as well. It's probably the heaviest one. I sometimes call this medium because it's lighter than Paladins, but it probably actually is
It is a little bit, just a touch lighter than Paladin, I feel.
Yeah, it's so it's the Last in the West Kingdom series. It's got a lot of moving parts, but it brings together a few mechanics in a really interesting way. It's got sort of a point-to-point movement around a rondel that's got a little bit of a Great Western Trail-y feel, and then it's got an engine build, a deck build mechanic where you've got to build cards, get them onto your tableau, and they sort of cycle through your tableau, where some of them will trigger immediately, some of them are an ongoing bonus, and some of them when they drop off your tableau. So you've got a small tableau that is moving that you have to manage. You've got a piece on the board that is moving that you have to manage. And there's a whole lot of different ways of getting points. And there's just enough interaction with other players. It's not fully solo, focusing on... No. You can focus a lot on what you're trying to do, but then there's things that when you're building up your engine and your cards, you want to be like, well, I definitely want this card, or I want to get this before someone else.
That's interactive.
And it's not a high interaction game, but for something where it's a tricky puzzle to work out on your own, you've also got that nice bit of interaction. We both really enjoyed it. We played it when it was prototype, not much has changed, maybe a little bit, but I think Shams is pretty good with that, so prototype is pretty much almost ready. It wasn't Kickstarter. Was it Kickstarter? It was Kickstarter. I think it was.
Yeah. So really, we both really enjoyed that. My next one is Seastead. So this is by WizKids.
Yes.
And this is a strictly 2-player game.
Yep.
And it's on your top 5.
Yep. Yeah, it's actually my number 1 for the year. I haven't ranked the rest of my...
Tarrant.
I haven't ranked the rest of the top 5.
You shouldn't say it yet, actually. Yeah.
I really, really enjoyed Seastead. I think it is... I think it's pretty clearly the best game I've played this year. And it's almost a shame it's got the restriction of being a designed 2-player game, because you can't spread it to people as quickly. But
this is probably why it makes it so good, I believe, because it's directly affect the other player, what you do. And just so juicy. Okay, I'll let you keep going because this is your number 1.
Yeah, it is. It's set in the Flotilla universe, but it's not played the same way as Flotilla, which was released last year. It's really a 2-player tile placement game, and you're trying to gather resources, and you use them to build buildings, which then give you other bonuses and hopefully enough resources to keep going.
Because the more you can do it without gathering resources, the better, because when you gather resources, your opponents also get some resources. Yep. I'm trying to avoid that.
Yes. And then there's a whole mechanic with you build shipyards, and then you position ships in places where if someone else uses if your opponent uses your ship, they can build cheaper, but you get resources out of it. So you've got to watch where you're putting your ships to force your opponent into...
There's a lot of meta.
To trying to give you something. There's academies that give you these bonus cards that play in various different ways. And then there's dock tiles, which just score based on the other resources. So you can put a dock down, and it'll score 3 points to someone who builds a shipyard next to it. And then it's a race to build that shipyard next to it. So that keeps the game different every time you play as well. It's just there's so many different layers going on. It's a really, really good game. I do think that it's become, you see the question on Facebook so often, like, what 2-player game should I play? Or we've worn through our copy of Seven Wonders Duel.
Yeah, but this is a different level difficulties though.
It's the next level up from Seven Wonders Duel. I think if you entered couples gaming with Seven Wonders Duel and you've mastered it, and are looking for something a little bit tougher, this is the game you want.
Just get it, go get it. That's it. Just stop watching for now, pause it, and then go get your copy of Seastead.
Yes.
Tarrant basically has covered it all pretty much. It's a really good... I can't really see this as a more than 2-player game, because you can... Not only you try to build your engine, but you also look at your opponents and try to block their engine. That is a totally valid strategy at different points of the games. So this is why 2 players, I think it's more than 2 players. I'll probably I can't concentrate on multitasking more than one person. But that is this is why you like to play games most of the times, where it is directly interactive and directly affect your the other player. And the engine build, there are different ways as well. I think it is replayable because there are different ways to build it, different area you can build, different way of scoring points. Yeah.
And 2 sides to the tiles as well, so a whole different set of bonuses for 2 ways of play.
That is Seastead.
Yes.
The next one, which is my number 6, is Kingdom Rush. Kingdom Rush was kickstarted last year by Lucky Duck Games and out this year.
Yes.
It is a tower defense game where I have actually played the app. It's originally an app in the Make a Board game, and it captures the app really well. It's cooperative. It's what you want. I don't know.
It's a puzzle.
It's a puzzle. The puzzle is so good. They have the introduction. They have the hero as well, which is also in the app. You can place your buildings to try to stop the horde from advancing and then lose the game. And each player has got different. Well, it plays solo, but otherwise for multiplayer, each player has got different spots, and you can upgrade your cards or your towers, but you have to pass it on to the next player. So that's actually a puzzle itself. There's a lot of ongoing puzzle that you have to consider.
Yeah.
It's easy to miss sometimes. Oh no, you should have that. And you have to think ahead a few times. It is a really good, well-made game, great components. Like Duck usually have great. It's not over the top, but really good component.
Yes. Yeah, it's a fun little puzzle. It is very much on the side of puzzle. There's not too much randomness that comes out.
Oh, the horde cards can.
The horde cards can come out in a different order. So it is, it is very much on the thinky side. What I will say, I do like the way they've taken an advancing horde of, it's like goblins walking next to each other in the app, and then in this they've got them all on one card, and you're throwing Tetris pieces at them and trying to cover them as efficiently as possible.
Very good. So if you don't, you probably have it or it's fulfilling right now or something like that. So that is Kingdom Rush. And that was my number 6. My number 5. Another one by Garfield Games. Well, it's technically, it's probably 2021, but anyway, we played it this year, and it is Hadrian's Wall. So it is a flip and write game that's probably one of the complex flip and write games I've played. And every time I play it, it feels like almost like a different game because so many things. So it has the Gamstrom Clever style where you try to cover as much as possible in the victory point track, which gives you bonus to unlock other bonuses, which combo with another one. The more you can do it, the better. The better your points is.
Yes.
Play solo. I think it's in most of, or if not all of Garfield games has got a solo mode, I think. It is so good. It is, you might look at it like it's a lot, but then again, when you know exactly what they are, it's really good. There's some sort of randomness a little bit where the pig attacks. You gotta have to create a defensive wall.
Yep.
Because it is essentially the theme is you trying to build walls against the pig's attacks. Is it Britannia?
Yes.
Yeah.
In Roman Britannia.
Mm-hmm. I haven't actually talked about the theme that much. I think so far, but it is a typical Euro gamer complex. I mean, unlike American games as well, but if the theme is really good, but the mechanics is not so good, I usually put aside. But if the theme is not so good, but the game really good, I would look at it more. I think I'll, that's for me.
And I mean, coming back to Hadrian's Wall, you can play it as you can just look at it as icons on a grid, but it does have a decent level of theme. You're building up your fortresses, you're building up your society, and trying to interact.
I really like that game.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It's definitely the most complex pen and paper game that I've ever played. And it has some nice mechanics. I like the way the end game objectives work as well, where you pick 6 out of the 12 that you'll have in your deck gradually through the game, and then you try to work to those. It's a nice little feature.
Yeah, and there's some good choices to be made as well. One of those games like, what do I do? There's so many options, or sometimes you have to plan it well. Anyways, that is Hadrian's Wall. Next one is number 4. Is Dwellings of Eldervale. I know it's, maybe if you've seen the components, oh my gosh, it's amazing. The game trays, the monsters with sound base. But apart from that, it's actually a really decent, a really good game, which is made it to number 4. And the thing is that I'm not usually drawn naturally to area control games, but this one has got a area control part. It's not like too massive like Blood Rage or anything like that, where you can just like gather everyone in one spot. Yeah. But it's nice, and it has got the battle or combat mechanics with dice rolling. But it is such a good game. There's so many ways, so many factions you can choose from to start with. It's like 16 or something like that. Different powers, different monsters you can choose from, different tiles, different elements. And, you want to focus on getting the cards to get your points. You want to build your dwellings to get the points. I thoroughly enjoy this, and I also thoroughly enjoy playing 2 versus 2 of dwellings. That is a different... it is the same game, but you kind of like, usually where one person has got more points than the others, because you need to concentrate on one person trying to do this and then the other person this. It could take a while though, because there's a lot of discussion. Oh, what should I do? What do you think they should do? So open table talk, but it is so good.
Yeah, I am enjoying the 2 versus 2, not for dwellings specifically, but since Concordia did it a couple of years ago, it really does open a different, if it's the right game that takes it. 2 versus 2 is a really nice way of playing things, because it does change everything.
It does change it. It's so good. But probably it's someone's, like, a lot of people's top 10 or something like that. Dwellings of Eldervale.
Yeah, it's it's not strictly area control. I guess people would call it
it's engine building.
I guess people would call it dudes on a map to some extent, because you have action spaces, and when you place your workers out, they've got to go adjacent, sort of in a chain from turn to turn until you bring them back. So where you're placing has those impacts, but then it can be interfered with by combat.
What I really like as well in this game is, yes, your action is by putting your dude on the board, as Tarrant said, but then when you retrieve it, you actually also activating certain actions that you can plan ahead and then try to combo it the best. The things that you build on your board, on your tableau, you pull your Meeple there and then activate that action, and then getting resources or building or recruiting and so on. So it's really good in that way as well. So moving on to number 3. Now, this is actually German version because we've got a German copy of the game.
Yes.
And it is originally from computer game or PC game, Anno 1800. It's a Euro engine building, civilization building. It captures the PC games quite well, by Martin Wallace and published by Thames and Cosmos or Cosmos. It is, I don't know, it's just one of those that is satisfying where you need to upgrade. You need workers to activate it. And the buildings are limited, so you need, it's interactive. I'll tell you why as well. It is another reason why it's interactive. So they're limited building. You take it, make sure you have the the materials, and there's usually, most buildings have got only 2. And if you don't have it, you can pay your opponent to use their building. They can't say no, they don't lose anything, but they get money. So that's the interaction. So you kind of like see I think to complete this mission, and the missions are different each game as well. So a bit of variability there, and you need the population that you need to fulfill. But essentially, you need to look around. What do you think other people will get, or you're trying to get as much as possible, as quick as possible, the building that you want. It is interactive with the trading mechanics. It is engine building. It's slightly different feel than the other Martin Wallace game, but it's a really good game.
Yeah, it's actually a very different feel to anything else I've really played. It's you're taking action so quickly. Every action is very short.
Just
and
one
it's
action
kind
per
of
player.
pushing 1 or 2 cubes around and building something. And so, most engine build. I guess a lot of the Euros you'll play the civilization, you're looking for big combos. This is a slow accumulation game where you're taking actions very quickly. And it's got this odd mechanic where you're building up population and you end up with a huge hand of cards.
It's actually where the victory points came from.
Yeah, and it's like running out of these cards is what triggers the end of your game. And you're just wondering, how is this ever going to happen? I've got 20 cards in my hand. And then it all sort of goes really rapidly towards the end. So it paces and it plays kind of unlike anything else that I've played. And I do enjoy it as well. And I think it's one of those, I reckon there'll be people out there who'll just absolutely hate it because of the way it plays being so different to what they're used to. But there'll be people who they'll come out and be like, what was that? I've got to play that again.
Oh, that's me.
See how that fits.
It's so good. And the PC games is also a little bit like that, though. There's no major point generating thing at once. It's like slowly, little by little, you build. It is, after all, a civilization game, I guess. And that was number 3. And number 2 is... The Crew. Well, it is very popular. You're probably not surprised we choose The Crew. I don't usually play trick-taking games, so I was super surprised when I played The Crew, and I love it, love it, love it. Cooperative. You're trying to solve the puzzle. That's how I learned trick-taking, by playing The Crew.
Yeah. And for those of you who are doing the mathematics, there's only 2 games left, and I've only put 3 in my top 5. So, of course, this is in my top 5, as will be the next one. Yes, I thoroughly enjoy The Crew as well, and it's such a simple idea, trick-taking, traditional style, essentially traditional trick-taking, and turning it into a cooperative puzzle. It's almost like he hasn't designed a game. He just has thought of an idea that added a whole new life to this genre of game. And before I'd come across The Crew, I'd always said that I'd never really found a modern trick-taking game that I liked at all. And I think it's because a lot of them were derivative of Hearts or Microsoft Hearts, where you get your hand and then you just use it as best you can to get points. And then modern games were tending to complicate how you're getting the points, but it was still that style. And then this one takes me more to the way I used to, playing 500 and other auction games like Bridge and things like that, where now you're thinking about how you can work with a teammate or all your teammates to use the cards you've got to achieve these objectives you're getting. And then you think about the way the game's designed as well. 4 suits of 9 cards plus 4 trumps, and you sort of think, well, that's probably perfectly balanced, because if a quarter of my deck were trumps like in a typical game, then maybe it's too easy to win tricks when you need them.
But this is only 4 out of the...
So it's excellent. And I've played a lot of trick-taking games. Stella hasn't, and we've been able to play that game together, and me teaching Stella how to count cards and look for things in trick-taking games. And
he's good.
It's just great. It is really, it's the most innovative thing that I've seen in gaming this year, and you look at it in isolation, you think it just seems so simple, but it works so well, and it won the Kennerspiel des Jahres for good reason. Excellent game.
And that takes us to number 1.
Also within my top 5.
Lost Ruins of Anna. Oh my gosh, that game. Oh, it blew my mind. I'll let you talk about it first.
This was the Essen release from Czech Games, and it is I look at it, it's another medium game, and there's actually, and I don't mean this to sound bad, there is nothing innovative in this game. It's a deck builder that has a board,
worker placement,
which has a light worker placement, kind of like how Everdell mixes light worker placement with tableau building. This mixes light worker placement with deck building, and
the deck building is kind of like, it's slightly different than other deck building. You can play certain cards, for free as a free action, and it really encourages you to have a really tight deck.
Yep. Yes, and you'll get these. There are some cards that allow you to buy ones and then put them on top of your deck, and so you're in only, I think, 4 or 5 rounds. So it's a quick sort of game. You've got to build this really tight deck that gets you a lot of resources quickly, and you then use that fundamentally to go exploring, fighting guardians, and moving up on a research track. And it's all about, there's 5 different resources, and you're trading resources for other resources and gaining resources and working your way up these different things that give you victory points, as well as some points for cards like a typical deck builder.
It is a hype-up game for a reason. We thoroughly enjoy it. We love deck building, we love worker placement, we love the track advancement, is that what you call it?
Yep. Sort of tech track or temple track type of thing, to borrow from they always seem to be temples when they have that sort of track. And it is, as I say, there is nothing new, but it is just a perfect interlocking of things that already exist to make something that is really satisfying. And I think a big part of it is when you see the way that the deck building cards can work together and all the different ways you can plan a hand with that. That's really nice. And you add to that you're taking one turn at a time, and there are certain things that there's a certain card you really need or a certain action space that you really need. And so the order that you do things in is actually a really tricky puzzle as well, and becomes quite competitive. And
it's also one of those that you try to combo a few things together or try to be as efficient as possible, because the longer you can do your turn is the better, and then usually you'll do well in the game.
Yes.
So that is our top 10 plus 5 honorable mention.
Yes. So just to summarize that again. So my top 5 were in no particular order: Red Outpost, Viscounts of the West Kingdom, The Crew, Lost Ruins of Arnak, and then my number 1 was Seastead.
So it's just like a clear winner. That's it, Seastead. Yes. By Westgate, so congratulations. So what is your favorite? Like, any of these games that we mentioned is your favorite? What is your top 10? Write in the comment sections below. We also want to see. And again, this is the games that we played. So there are other games that we haven't played. There are so many games. We can only play so many games, of course. And again, this is subjective because this is what
Yes.
we personally like. You probably, oh my gosh, I really hate that game. Why do you choose it? Well, this is our preference. And I understand if you like something that we don't like. So that is our top 10 plus 5.
And hopefully we haven't left out any great games just because we didn't get to play them.
No, it might. I have a feeling that it might happen.
They probably are. I
Yeah.
know I look back at last year, you rated Crystal Palace very highly. I didn't get to play it until this year.
Oh yeah, like
Probably would have
yes.
made my list if I'd played it at the time. It was a very good heavy
That's
game,
right.
that
Last
one.
year's list was Crystal Palace in my top 10.
Yep.
There you go. It's for a reason. So I mean, we might even do a category of next year's like games that we missed playing last year. It should be in our top 10 or something
Yeah, we'll
like
just
that.
pretend they're 2021 games.
Yeah, all that. So that is it. Hopefully you find this useful. And again, share your games in the comment sections below. And if you enjoy this video found somewhat useful, please hit the like button and subscribe to us if you haven't already done so. We do a lot of have to play, review, live playthrough on the weekend and so on. I'm also on social media like Instagram, for example. Find me there, we can chat there, and hopefully we'll see you in the next video. And also watch our other videos for top 10 stocking fillers and top 10 sequel or expansion games. So that is also either coming out or will come out soon. And hopefully we'll see you in our next videos. Bye!